Hello.
Hello. All
Okay.
right, I can see you.
Yeah.
Um,
Good.
all right, so
Um,
yeah, what are we talking about?
yeah. So I would like to cover the three main areas of veganism.
Okay.
Uh, there is health, the ethics, and the environmental aspect.
Okay.
I'd like to start with the ethical part. I can see you have had quite a few discussions with the garden farms,
Hmm.
and I'm curious, what part are you missing to be convinced that eating plants is more unethical than eating meat, for instance?
Um, like, what would I need to hear to think that eating plants is more unethical?
Yeah, but also more like what haven't you heard? Like,
Well, I would just need a good argument that there is more suffering caused to animals by eating plants. Like, so for example, if Garland Farm's stance is going by numbers and saying that insects are a big part of it, if he's saying like trillions of animals die because trillions of insects die, I'm going to care a lot less about a trillion insects than, say, the suffering of 1,000 cows or something like that. Now, there will be other factors if there's clear evidence that it's leading to a certain negative impact. But I'm not aware of there being like a large amount of suffering by farming plants.
um, one thing I do know is that Garden Farms has also done some stuff showing uh, large animals dying, like birds, for instance, that
Mm-hmm.
twice as many birds die from pesticides than cattle are slaughtered each year. Um, and then it's also reasonable to infer that many other mammals also get these harmful effects of pesticides, either getting harmed or getting or dying from it.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's see. How many cattle are slaughtered each year?
From what I understand, it's 33 million in the U.S. around there, and
Okay.
the evidence he provided was 67 million birds are killed
And that's
um,
yearly.
yearly in the U.S. and 670 million were harmed.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. As he's talked to me about it, he's never presented the numbers in that way. That's definitely interesting and worth thinking about. Because I would have to assume that pesticides that lead to a death would lead to a horrible death. Um, I don't know how bad birds suffer, but I would think that if you die from poisoning, it's probably just slowly killing you, and the fact that it would happen in a short enough amount of time that it's your life's not extended, but it's also so slow that it's a horrible death. Yeah, no, I would think of that as worth comparing. Like, I don't know if I have a strong stance on do I care more about the suffering of a cow than a bird. So yeah, that's worth looking at the numbers. Yeah.
Mhm. Um,
But also, I will point out I'm pretty strongly against pesticides. Now, I
mhm.
don't know if I have like I would prefer not using pesticides, not using GMOs, all these different things. But I don't know exactly what it takes to feed all the starving people in the world and to get people out of poverty. So I don't want to make like some wildly ignorant stance on like what the world should do. But as far as for myself and what I think is ethical, I would say that we shouldn't be using pesticides. And then I care more about myself than the ethical part. So I don't want to put pesticides in my body if it's bad for my body. So there's that.
Okay. So what I would say to that is that if we grant that plant agriculture by and large entails more animal suffering than usual animal agriculture, I think a system which utilizes animal agriculture is more effective. And I think the way we can determine that is by if it increases global food security. So, for instance, if we have a vegan world where we feed everyone on plants, then if cattle or any other livestock animal contributes to global food security, then we can feed the byproducts from, for instance, some of the plant production, and then we can actually decrease the amount of crop production we use. We do.
Well, that was the next thing I was going to mention. So I usually focus on the ethical side of things, and so these numbers only factor in when they're ethical, which is right now. So I don't have the numbers for how much of our crops go to feeding livestock. But I guess that would be the other problem is if we have 1 acre of some kind of crop that we're growing to feed ourselves, and that kills, let's say, I don't know, X amount of birds. And then we have 1 acre of crops to feed to livestock, and that kills the same amount of birds, but then that's also feeding the livestock, and then we're killing the livestock. Unless the birds don't, well, not even the birds are consuming the insects. So unless the insects don't consume the crops that we feed to livestock at the same rate that they consume crops that we feed to humans, I would say that the bird death from crops has got to be however much worse, or at least equalized to what we feed to livestock, right?
I mean, is your argument more that including animal agriculture will increase crop production because we grow food for them? Is that what you're saying, or?
Correct. Yeah. I don't know how much a cow eats versus how much a human eats, but let's say, so I only eat, aside from bivalves, I only eat plants. So let's say a cow ate the same amount that I ate. So the if insects went for the same crops that equally that cows eat and that I eat, if the same amount of crops are grown to feed me and to feed this cow, then that alone has the same amount of bird death. And then on top of that, that cow is going through whatever it's going through, which I mostly only care about the factory farmed element of if that cow's going through the suffering of a life in a factory farm. And so it's just added on top of it. But maybe I'm not thinking through various elements of maybe there's less crops going to cows than they're going to me.
Yeah, okay. So what I'll say to that is probably that I've done some calculations on it because I've had this type of discussion with someone else. So if we do the calculations for the amount of human edible food that is going to cattle, then we can actually calculate that everything between per 0.1 gram, 0.1 kilograms to 0.6 kilograms of human edible food going to cattle. At least 1 kilogram of human edible meat, boneless meat, comes from that. Because all of the other food it's being given is byproducts.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, no, I have heard that, and I wasn't sure exactly how accurate that is, but yeah. So it's the basic idea that if I don't know if cows eat wheatgrass, but if you grow wheat and then you take the wheat berries off of it for humans, and then the rest that humans wouldn't consume, that goes to cows, basically. Something like that, but maybe a different product.
Wait, I didn't quite catch that. Try again.
Yeah, so like when you grow like wheat or oats or something like that, you get really tall grass, and at the top you have a section of either like oat groats or wheat berries. You have like the part that we humans take and we consume, but we humans don't consume the stalk of that grass. But is the idea that, because I'm not too educated on like what we feed cattle, is the idea that part we don't use, we send that to farmers and farmers feed the cattle, so it's not anything extra grown. Is that what you mean when you say the byproduct?
Yeah, that's the main part, but also just pasture. Pasture is also a big part of the diet. Grasslands. just running around grazing is also a big part of the diet, but mainly just those inedible byproducts. And if we only count the part that is human edible that are going to livestock feed, that is the numbers we get out. So it's a net benefit for global food security, and therefore including it in a food system would decrease the amount of cropland needed.
Gotcha. Let me look something up real quick. Okay. So I was looking it up. So the EPA has estimated a word I don't know, alone kills 1 to 2 million birds each year in the United States. Worldwide, it's estimated to kill up to 67 million birds by pesticides. So that 67 million that Garland was talking about, that was the number I had remembered. I just wasn't sure if it was yearly or location. But yeah, it looks like it's yearly, and it's worldwide. And so when I look up... let's see. Okay, so cattle, let's see. 2022. Oh, no. 2020. The total was 293.2 million cattle were slaughtered in 2020. So that's just cattle. That's not including other livestock. So this doesn't prove anything necessarily. There's still factors to come into it. But so that's what we're looking at. It's about 5 times the amount of cows die than birds. But we can also try to factor in, because I hear that deer have the same situation where they'll eat some products that have been sprayed with pesticides and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. Okay. I don't quite have the article on me.
I just did a simple Google search, so I don't know. Yeah. I just Google searched cows killed per year worldwide, and then birds die from pesticides per year, and both those things came up. So.
Okay, I found my source again. I'm pretty sure when I read it, it was in the US, but I might have read it wrong. So it says here, it is estimated that roughly 672 million birds exposed annually to pesticides on U.S. agricultural lands, 10% or 67 million are killed. And this is on U.S. agricultural land.
Okay, yeah, send that my way. I'll send you what I have here. Because this is the EPA, so the United States Environmental Protection Agency. And yeah, it points out 1 to 2 million birds a year, and then worldwide 67. So.
Yeah. What I'll also say, if we grant the numbers that you made, it should also be noted that the cattle killed from the production of meat also goes to feed people and a bunch of other stuff actually. And the birds and other animals dying from plant agriculture, are usually just wasted. Like they just die for no other purpose than to protect the crops.
Okay, no, that's a fair point.
And then there's also pesticide drift, so it also goes even further beyond the cropland, and also kills animals that wouldn't be interacting with the crops even.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. But that next part would factor into even with the byproduct being fed to livestock. Because what I'm wondering is it achievable to farm in a way where there is no pesticides? Whether we fed people mostly meat or plants, is that achievable?
No, that's also why I'm arguing that not necessarily feeding a bunch of animal products to people would be the most ethical, but the most ethical food production system in the current paradigm would be one including animal agriculture.
Okay, so there's some kind of fine balance. Like no matter what we're feeding people, if we tried to figure out the most perfect ethical system for growing things that are edible for humans, it would be some mixture of animal and plant.
Yeah, at least in the current paradigm. And then anything can happen with technological advances in both fields. Um, yeah, there's also something about selective breeding and genetically modifying animals, so we can have less animals produce more meat uh, by also being fed less food. Um, Well, I
Less
don't know
food that
about the food part, but yeah, definitely
yeah.
less animals producing more meat is definitely something that we have already observed being the case.
Okay. Do you think this should be done in an ethical way, though? Because we kind of do the opposite sometimes, where factory farms will pump hormones into chickens, make them get big really fast, and it's so fast that their legs will break out from under them, and they'll be kind of just sitting there in pain, just being fat chickens ready to die. Um, so,
Um, for me, I think you shouldn't do unnecessary harm. Um, Although there is also like an arbitrary line for what counts as unnecessary harm. Like if you torture all animals immensely for like a 0.1% increase in production, I would also consider that unnecessary harm.
hmm.
But if it's something like factory farming where we confine them in spaces, it's a huge benefit to both using less land and also producing more meat with less land. So I wouldn't view that as something that should go away currently, because I mostly care about the health aspect, but I also tackle
Hmm.
the ethical part because that's what many vegans care about.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I mean that's what I care about. My focus is the ethical side, but I also the health is a big important thing too. If I was convinced that humans were healthier eating meat, I would eat meat. I would just do it more ethically. Like I would try to find out exactly what the healthy amount of meat to eat was, and I would eat exactly that and never more, and probably never less. But I definitely haven't been convinced that. Oh, I guess that's one of your three
Yeah,
topics. Should we
yeah.
focus on ethics any further, or do you want to go to the health topic?
Maybe a little more. What do
Yeah.
you think about buying like regeneratively farmed animals, like Garden Farms is doing?
Yeah,
So
so I
only,
think I think
yeah,
that's better. I think yeah, the yeah, if we can detect suffering, my goal is less suffering. I would rather a deer be shot in the woods and be eaten than three cows uh, have like less of a good life living in kind of a smaller area, but they're out in the sun, they're eating grass, but they don't have enough room to be like happy, but they're going to live out their lives and have like long lives. I would rather I would rather kill this animal than to have these animals have a great life, or not a great life, but have a deer have a great life and then be snapped out of existence. I would prefer that to happen than another animal or a handful of animals have slightly less of a good life and never be snapped out of existence.
okay. I have just one question, or maybe more of a point, but that assumes that living in the wild is better for well-being than being safe. Because what we can also
Mm.
see is that they are both selectively bred to be less stressful, because in stressed animals the meat tastes worse. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and also we can also see that brain size decrease quite significantly as well, because they don't need the parts of the brain to be alert from predators all the time, so they have a
Mm-hmm.
more stress-free life than they would in the wild. So
Mm.
it's very possible that they actually live a better life on pasture.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I would think that should all be factored in. An example I brought up from the start of having my channel is that if we could create like zombie cows where where they're basically like we clone a cow, but when we clone it, we make that one have basically no brain, but it has the ability to just roam around, eat grass, and it doesn't think, feel. There's no suffering. It doesn't make connections with others. It doesn't have a baby to cry out for, any of that stuff. And they just like roamed around and got killed and eaten. I'd be totally in favor of that. So for me, it comes down to, is it reasonable for us to call something an element of suffering that is not needed? And so yeah, if you make a good point. Now I don't know how I feel about selective breeding or just human interference with things. I don't know enough about it, but like I don't like the idea that when people are going to when a human wants to get pregnant, that she wants to select genes to make sure her baby's going to be 7 feet tall and muscular, and I'm just personally not a fan of the idea of messing with nature in that sense. And so I would have to look further into it to make a stronger ethical stance on if we should try to selectively breed cows to be dumb so there's less suffering for them. But if we're going to allow eating them anyways, then working towards having less suffering is good. So yeah, it's complicated. But I mostly was using the deer example to point out that the element of suffering. So even if you had one cow inside of a fenced off piece of land and another cow into another fenced off piece of land, if let's say cows specifically wanted a certain amount of land. Let's say that we could do the math and find out a certain amount of land that would make them not even recognize they're fenced in, and they would have a great life, a way better life than they would have out in the wild. If cow A had that amount of land, and then cow B had half that amount of land, so they would be way better off than factory farms. They might be exactly what like a animal sanctuary is like, but it's enough of stress that it'd bum them out a little bit. But they're gonna live out their lives. They're gonna live like 30 years and be great on this land, but they could have had a better life. I would rather the cow that's on the better land with the better life that lives to like 25 be shot and put out of its misery and eaten than the other cow be on half that amount of land and live out its life to 30, die of natural causes, and not be eaten.
Mm.
I'm basically saying I care more about the suffering than the death is all I'm saying.
I have a question. What is your stance on like the odd predator thing, if you've heard about it?
Oh, like if we should kill a lion to save a zebra? Like predator culling?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on that. I think it's really tough. I mostly just appeal to my own emotions on this because if I was a carnivore, I would want to eat animals. I wouldn't want to be taken out because of the fact that I was born that way. And so a big part of me says, let him be, like, give him an equal chance. The zebra can try to get away. The lion can try to get the zebra, and we don't interfere. But it's complicated. If a lion caught a zebra and was eating it, but it didn't kill it, and it was like suffering, and I was there and I had a gun, I would probably be up for shooting the zebra to put it out of its misery. So yeah, I don't know. I haven't decided an official concrete feeling on that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
What I have seen, if you take like a very I don't know how to describe it, but a very, very serious and extreme vegan position, you're like trying to maximize everything to cause as least suffering as possible, then killing all other predators is almost like a necessity, almost entailed by the vegan view. At least if you grant that all animals have the right to life. If you agree with that proposition, then you're entailed to that. It's kind of either it's a contradictory or you're entailed to calling predators.
Yeah. Well, so one thing I'll say is I don't believe in natural rights. So I guess if I were going to feel that animals have the right to life, it would just be that I would want to afford them those rights, and that maybe I'd want like my government to afford them those rights as well. Um, I care more about what individuals do, not. I care more about suffering than I do pleasure. So everything that happens, we're either feeling suffering or we're feeling pleasure. Um, I don't have any need to maximize pleasure. So I just wouldn't want to cause suffering, and then I wouldn't think other people should cause suffering. Now, if suffering is being caused out in nature, it's really complicated. I don't know. I don't know the right answer, but I don't think it means that you can only care about one thing, you know? Like, for example, if, like, I don't view veganism as any different than caring about, like, human rights and all these other different things. We can just feel like bad things are happening and we don't want them to. If this cow's being killed, let's say we knew for a fact, everybody agreed humans are herbivores. They don't need a single bit of meat in them, and even the person eating meat agrees, but they like the taste of meat. So if somebody's like killing a cow and the cow's suffering before it dies, and then they eat the cow, then I can point out like, okay, this element of suffering is not good. This shouldn't be happening. And I can feel the same thing where if I was around during slave days and somebody like had a slave and they were forcing this slave to work, I could say like, that's a person. They should be free. They should be doing this thing. And so even though vegans might care about animal suffering, I don't think it means that you must also take a certain stance on what's going to happen when animals that can't make moral choices, they don't have any moral agency, are um, are causing suffering to other animals. Does that make sense? Like you can care
Mhm.
about circumcision but not care about abortion, or you can care about various different topics. Caring about
Mhm.
animals doesn't mean you have to care about them all in a specific way.
Yeah, but the critique is only if you agree to the proposition that all animals have the right to life. Um,
Gotcha. And what do you by right? Do you mean the way I described it, that
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 other things don't impede on its right to life, so as to leave it alone or don't kill it, basically.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I guess anybody that was a vegan that thought humans shouldn't eat animals but didn't care if other animals eat animals, then they wouldn't
Hmm.
think that animals have the right to life. Unless you're talking about a natural rights, which a lot of people believe in natural rights, and I don't.
I can walk you through the logic behind it.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds good.
So it's basically an obligate carnivore necessarily needs to eat meat to survive.
Hmm.
So an obligate carnivore can only have the right to life if its prey doesn't have a right to life. And then
Hmm.
vice versa. The prey can only have a right to life if the obligate carnivore doesn't.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I would guess that somebody that thinks the obligate carnivore that should be taken out in that case, um, that it's not that they don't have the right to life; it's that they don't have the right to impede on the rights of others. And so, even though they're born that way, they have no moral agency. They're not choosing it. I guess I'm just like trying to steel man other people's positions. I don't know exactly if I feel this way, but so it'd be kind of like a human. If a human's born with no moral agency, they have no empathy. They're just a psychopath, and and to them, like what they must do, and there's no other option. They're not choosing a bad option over a good option. To them, they must eat human flesh, so they want to kill humans and eat them. And we could even call them an obligate cannibal, um, considering that they know nothing. Like the same way a lion might look at a zebra and go like, "That's what I need to eat to survive." Let's say a human's born with that feeling towards another human. We might need to recognize that we want to take care of the human that the cannibal's wanting to eat, even if we think all humans deserve a right to life. There might be some flaws to that just popped into my head, but
I mean, it could almost act as self-defense to protect another human or another one of your species. So, for instance, if a lion started killing any animal for that matter, then that animal also can use self-defense and end up killing the lion. Or if a lion attacked another lion, then it could be that the other lions in that pack would go after the aggressor and then kill the cannibal lion. So it could, in a way, be characterized as self-defense for one species.
Yeah, no, and that's a fair point. Well, let me challenge you with an idea. You seem to care about animal suffering, even if you don't care about it to a degree that would affect the fact that I'm guessing you lean towards thinking that it's healthy to eat animals. But let's just look at the moral side of it. So let's say you were out in nature and you had a gun, you had like a long rifle, you're up in a tree, wherever you're at, no wild animals can harm you. You see a lion, get a zebra. The lion's not in a pack. It's by itself. It eats a zebra. It eats like half of it and it's full. It doesn't need any more food. But then it goes and it takes down another zebra just for fun. And it leaves it there. And then you recognize this. You're like, oh, it already ate what it wanted to eat. Now it's just killing for fun. You can even look into the future and you can know like that lion is not doing some strategy. It is killing for fun. If it was going to go up to another zebra and kill it and you had that gun, would you kill it since it's not killing for its obligate carnivore needs?
No, not really.
Okay, and so I'm guessing
I would say it would not be a nice move from the lion's side, but I wouldn't care enough to kill the lion.
Okay. What if it was a tribe of people that never started a civilization like we know, and it's just a group of wild people? There's like a couple thousand or whatever, and then we see a similar thing happen.
So a person kills more people.
Yeah, like there's maybe two tribes in this area. Mm-hmm. You're in this magical bubble and you have a gun and they can't even see you. And let's say they're cannibals actually. No, let's not say they're cannibals. Sorry, I'm going to take that back. But they're there's just two tribes. They're out doing stuff, and then we'll just say one of them's going to kill another one for fun. And then maybe it kills one and then it's going to kill another one. And you're like, oh, I see what's happening here. There's no self-defense. This is just a human from one tribe killing another human from another tribe.
It's a tough one, but since I value humans intrinsically, then there might be something about giving something that resembles like a death penalty to the perpetrator.
Well, what if you can't, like, so they're in their own tribe, they're not part of the US, you're off traveling, you're just in the middle of like Africa or something. And now we have to make it hypothetical because I'm not saying Africa is just full of wild tribe people. It's just on some island that nobody's been to before, and these people, this is just how they live and they're doing their thing. So you could kill the one to preserve future life of other people that he's going to kill. But let's just say you can't like imprison anybody. You can either kill the guy as a punishment, kill the guy as a defense of other people. But you have to either kill or let him live.
Yeah. Okay. That was also like what I was working with. So I would probably kill the person, maybe both as a punishment and as a defense of other people. But kind of like the same logic that is behind a death penalty, for instance. It would be kind of the same thing, like catching a serial killer and then preventing them from doing any more. And if there is no prison you can put them in, and the only punishment is death, then I think I would kill one to save many.
Okay, and it's to save many humans, and it's because
Yeah.
you are a human, so you know how they feel. Like
No,
it's okay.
it's not quite that. It's because I value humans, and I think the reason why I value humans is because we're part of the same species. This goes for basically all species on Earth. They have like an extra an extra thing in their mind that just gives them more moral credence to their own
Mm.
species, to help uh, to help their own species and not to kill their own species unless absolutely necessary. Of course, there are some species that don't fit this category, but the vast majority, and I think it's hard coded into our genes to care way more about humans than other animals.
Gotcha. Do you think there are things that are kind of coded in us that we don't do based off our levels of being able to think things through and empathy and different things like that? Like I would guess that if you remove some of our empathy and our rationality, that we would be just like every other animal, like raping each other and doing all these different things. But we can like a man can look at a woman and go, "Oh, she's very attractive," but if I were to do this, it would hurt her and make her sad and this thing. So we be a part of society that can treat each other well. Um, so so do you think that there's things that are encoded in us that we could change if we thought there's a moral reason to change?
Sure.
Okay, okay. Gotcha. Okay, and so okay, is there anything else besides this code that you think is there that you would call? I guess we must call it unexplainable. It's just a code that makes us want to defend our own. Is there any other
Oh,
reason though?
it's probably a selected pressure, genetically selected pressure to preserve one's own species. Um,
Okay,
Not
but
just randomly there.
do you personally see any other reason, like for just for yourself?
For myself, I haven't thought enough about it.
Okay.
But it would make sense that if you're maybe in a tribe of 50 people or something, and one person in the tribe killed three people, then it would make sense that you would either banish that person or kill that other person to save the rest of your tribe,
Yeah.
for survival purposes. And
No,
therefore,
I agree with
yeah,
you completely, but I mean from the stance of you are in a bubble that they can't see and you have a gun and you're watching two tribes and you can one person from a tribe kills another one and you can kill them, but it's not going to personally affect you.
yeah,
Um,
I care about universal human rights.
okay. Like for me, I hadn't thought about this until a few months ago, so I'll share this thought with you and maybe you'll feel similar. But I was trying to imagine if a random person named Bob, who's like 35 over here, he dies and I hear about it in the news. Like, do I care that Bob died? Let's say Bob didn't suffer and Bob has no family to care that he's gone. Like, what do I really care about here? And the only thing I can imagine that I care about is that I am a human. I'm the same species as Bob, and I don't want to die. I have all these things I want to do in my life, so I want to live. I have this like strong desire to live. So really the only emotional connection I have with Bob is I wonder if he, like me, had plans and things he wanted to do that he didn't get to do. But outside of that, I can't think of any reason to care that he's out of existence. I would care if he was made to suffer, if somebody stabbed him. I wouldn't. It wouldn't matter that there's no family to care about him. It would matter that he suffered. But if he just got like snapped out of existence, a train hit him and he had no suffering, he just died instantly. Um, I think I'm only bummed out that I know how bad I want to live, and he doesn't get to keep doing that.
Mhm.
So that's just I was trying to come up with other reasons. I'm like, why should I care about an individual living or not? And that's all I came up with. Okay, so you go off of this encoding. Do you accept the ideas of what we know about how humans evolved? Like basically, the earliest hominin is Homo habilis, and then we got Homo erectus. We got the Neanderthals, and do you accept this scientific understanding of history?
Yeah.
Like that there was a group of humans that weren't Homo sapiens, they were Neanderthals, and do you accept that they existed and they don't exist anymore, even though most Homo sapiens have Neanderthal DNA in them?
Yeah.
Okay, so okay, and then and before that was like Homo erectus. So I think there's like some kind of mixture of Homo erectus and Neanderthal, kind of led to what we have. Would you? I don't know how different Homo erectus would be from us. I think they're a tad bit shorter. But anyways, what I'm trying to get at is if you would kill a Homo sapien in a tribe on an island that no humans ever been to, that was killing another Homo sapien because you have a connection to Homo sapiens and you feel like you want to defend the rest of the people in the tribe that is being killed by another Homo sapien. But you wouldn't feel that way if it was lions because we don't have a strong connection to them. How far back do we have to go to at some point there's like an arbitrary line of when you care? Now, I think you're right. I care more about humans than any other animals. I would save almost any human in a burning building than I would save a dog. But I'm just trying to work this idea out. Like if you knew it was Neanderthals, would you shoot? Because they're human, but not the off species. I don't know what the term is. That just the. Anyways, would you shoot a Neanderthal that was going to kill another Neanderthal?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think this tries by you're trying like some name the trait thing.
No, not exactly. I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, I guess it falls into that. I'm not trying. I don't use name the trait. I don't like. I don't like name the trait for a handful of different reasons. But I'm just trying to get a feel for, because you seem like a very honest person, even though we don't agree on a handful of things. So I'm just honestly curious where your stance is. So it seems worth breaking down.
Yeah. So I would. It's not humans in total like the only thing I care about. It's more what reminds me of humans. So human-like, if I were to name a trait. So it would be something that if I were to kill it, for instance, it would feel as if I was killing a human, or it reminded me. It reminds me of a human, basically. Because also the thing with species is it's kind of hard. Because if you go through the fossil record, like from one fossil to the next, you cannot distinguish like where it changes from one species to another. But if you skip like 50 generations, then you can.
Okay.
So there's not one specific line. It's very arbitrary. It's also different for each human. Where they draw the line on human-like, and then the closer to human they are, the closer to the Homo sapien, what we classify as Homo sapiens, I would say, the more value they get.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so I don't know if you know this, but Homo habilis, it's about 2 million years ago. A lot of scientists don't want to classify that in the Homo genus. They think that was the arbitrary line should actually be cut off after them. They're like 3 feet. They're like 3 feet tall. They're way more intelligent and way more capable of doing things closer to us than say like chimps. They're more human than chimps. But some people think that the cutoff should be before then. But if you saw this 3 foot tall, kind of human looking thing, but kind of chimp looking thing, and let's say you felt like, okay, that's the earliest human type thing I'd save because it seems so much more like me than it seems like a chimp. And then you take something like, I'm trying to think of a random animal. Let's just say a deer. Let's imagine if there was an animal that looked like a deer, so nothing like a human at all, but it had like a large brain and it could like think and talk and it could rationalize. And let's say they were like way more intelligent than humans. And I think the main thing I would want to figure out here with the deer is, would they agree to rules? If they lived within what we call our borders of whatever country one is in, would they agree with other humans? Hey, we have these laws. Do you agree with these laws? There can be deer that are senators and presidents or whatever, but that they agree like that we can have an understanding. If a deer tries to kill a human, then that deer's going to jail. And they go, yeah, we agree. And they can talk, and they can be loving and caring. They can also be vengeful. They have everything that we think of that a human thinks and is going to say. But the only difference is they're covered in, I don't know if that deer have fur or whatever that's called, hide or whatever, and they walk on all fours. Would any element of the human-like brain and speech make you not want to kill the deer?
Yeah, that also ties into the human-like trait. It's not necessarily the appearance; it could also be the way of acting or the internal state, like the intelligence. So I consider language to be a human-like thing.
Cool.
And advanced intelligence, like comprehension of logic and mathematics, also reminds me of human-like features.
Okay, cool. No, I dig that. I like that. Okay. And then, okay, so then the last thing I want to ask you just on this line of thinking would be, now let's take that deer and make it to where it can't talk and we can't recognize that it has this, but let's say you magically know. Let's say somebody gives you the information that that deer thinks no different. Now, I don't think that's how deer think, so this isn't like a gotcha or anything. This is just a wild hypothetical. If you were told, okay, all animals in the world are dumb, some of them are smarter than others, pigs are smarter than cats, but deer specifically are just as intelligent as humans, and they have just as many emotions. They cry at things differently, whatever. They rationalize, and with each other, they can rationalize just like humans do. But they don't have speech, so we can't detect that. So you would be the only one that knows. Just some like mighty power lets you know. Would their brain, how their brain is working and their inner thinking, make you view it as human-like, where the only difference between this deer and the last one we were talking about that you said is human-like, the only difference at all is the speech itself. Everything else is the same.
Yeah, I would still give it moral value, but I would also add this. I value things on like a hierarchy.
Okay.
So, for instance, I view that meat is essential for human life, or at least animal products. So I rank them on like a hierarchy. So currently we don't have a need to kill these deers. Like we don't need to kill this secretly highly intelligent deer for any reason. So let's say that all livestock animals and other dumb animals on the earth vanished. Then I would say then we could, for instance, say what is then the least human-like animal, which also gives a fair amount of meat or utility or resources, any of that. And then move off the hierarchy. So the last thing I would eat and kill for food would be humans, like Homo sapiens, and then probably Homo neanderthals, and then lower and lower. Yeah, that's probably how I would do it.
Yeah, no, and I think the same way. I've even broken it down to the levels of if we only had humans to eat, which ones would be the best ones to farm based off intelligence and whatnot. And I would probably eat the babies. But anyways, we don't have to get into human baby eating. But no, I agree with you that the deer, specifically that deer, I'd care more about that species of deer than any other animal. But if I had to eat that deer to survive, I'd eat that deer to survive. Cool. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and I think that might be the difference. Maybe that's a good way to explain how vegans think. Is so I eat bivalves. I eat clams and mussels and oysters and stuff. And a lot of vegans say that that's not vegan, and that even though the science is out, there's no detection that they are sentient. A lot of vegans say use the precautionary principle, like maybe they're sentient, so don't do it. So I think maybe that's a good way to look at vegans to make them maybe seem less crazy to you. Is vegans want to give deer and cows and pigs and all these other animals the benefit of the doubt that maybe they have that thing of how I just described the deer that you were saying you would respect, where maybe they can have some level of a brain that would make you go, if I knew what was in there, I wouldn't be doing this. And just because they can't speak doesn't change it. And so us vegans are giving them kind of a precautionary principle to match the claim you're making. And we just like kind of follow through with it. Where on your end, you haven't been convinced that their brain is at a level to care about in much of any way. And then on top of that, you think there's a health aspect of it that makes you cross that. Because I'm guessing if you were convinced, if you read enough studies, done your own studies, went into the future and just saw that it was decided that humans don't need meat to survive, but it wouldn't be harmful for them. They could just eat it for pleasure. I'm guessing you'd be a vegan?
Okay, so the criteria for me to become a vegan would be a couple of things. So first of all, that it's as healthier, or close to as healthy as a meat eating diet. Could be carnivore, could be hyper carnivore, could just be the standard omnivore, whatever it is. If it's about as healthy, and also, of course, killed less animals. So if crop deaths and crop protection and stuff like that wasn't a thing, and it was very obvious what the answer was, and if there's not like any obscene environmental harm, like desertification from the lack of manure in some cases, then I would be.
Cool. Okay. I got that vibe. I believe that that's the case. And which is cool. Like there's a lot of people out in the world that just they don't want to think about it, and they just view it as, oh, we're humans and those are animals, so nothing matters. No detail of suffering or any of those levels matter. Even though if you sat down with them, they might like change their mind if they thought about it. But I think it's great because I think of myself as very similar to everything you're saying. I'm not an expert on reading studies, but I've read enough and seen enough and experienced enough being vegan as long as I've been vegan. Not that I'm the healthiest person in the world, but I feel that humans can be perfectly healthy on a vegan diet. So I'm essentially like you, because if I didn't think that, if in my head right now I was convinced that we need meat the way that you think we need meat, I would probably eat the same amount of meat you're probably eating. And so, so we might be the same person basically, except with a different thought on what's healthy for humans to consume.
Okay,
so
then we can move on to that.
Yeah, let's do it. But just so you know, I love this talk. I'm looking forward to having more talks. I do have to hop off here in about 15-ish minutes, maybe 20 minutes, because I have another talk in about an hour from now, and I have to go take care of a few things. So maybe we'll just do a 15 or 20 minutes into health, and then on the part 2, we'll get back into it.
Oh yeah, sure. So the first thing I would say is probably the thing that at least convinces me the most is our anatomy and our evolution. If you look at the evolution of humans in the past couple 100,000 years, it's very clear that from basically all stable isotope studies that we've done, that humans were primarily carnivorous. Do you know of the stable like the nitrogen 15 stable isotope test?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
But basically, the higher the level is, the higher in the food chain, and also the higher the meat intake was. And what we can see is that Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthals were consistently ranking higher than known carnivores like hyenas. So it's very clear that there were at least quite a few periods where meat was, by and large, the primary substance of food. And if you look at our anatomy, we have the pH in the stomach of a scavenger, so around the carnivore level, maybe even a bit lower. And the lower it is, the better it is at either dissolving bacteria or digesting meat. Then you can also move on to digestive tract. We have a long small intestine, a little bit shorter colon, and basically no cecum.
Mm.
So to me, and then I also have one thing. Plants also have an evolution to produce defense chemicals to defend from animals wanting to eat them, because they cannot run away. They can only use chemicals. So what I would say is it's unreasonable.
Can I respond to that, or do you want me to respond to that after you finish the next thing?
Yeah, I want to finish this.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so what I would say is it's unreasonable to assume that humans can tolerate or even get health benefits, or that a toxic plant would be unharmful or maybe even beneficial towards an unadapted species. And I could also supply more of that, but I want to hear your response first.
Yeah. Well, mostly I'm just curious if you have any knowledge on this. I'm wondering if because I mean everything's kind of evolved to try to survive, which is why plants will release toxins to make them just to have toxins exist. Do those toxins not affect other animals?
Yeah, they do. Actually, the thing about herbivores is that they can also not just eat any plant. Giraffes can only eat certain leaves, and if some other herbivore tried to eat those leaves, then that herbivore would get sick or maybe even die. And
But let's say the ones they do eat. So let's say something like you say any random animal, like whatever a deer is naturally going to eat that's growing in the woods. Would they only consume something that the chemical that is being let off to defend the plant against the things wanting to eat it wouldn't affect? Or not that it wouldn't affect, but just like don't all plants let off chemicals to try to deter things from eating them, and then so you might be right. Like if grass lets off a chemical and that makes things not want to eat it, and then if a human eats it, it's going to be bad for them because they're not designed to take in that chemical. Where if a cow eats it, it won't be bad for them because they are designed to. I just wasn't sure if you were making a claim that there are any plants out there that are eaten by herbivores that don't let off chemicals.
I take the position that all plants have some amount of defense chemicals. Okay. And then there are of course different parts of the plant, so the fruit would not have as many as the stem or the leaves. Yeah.
So wouldn't the only argument there be that those chemicals, if they are bad for humans, then they are bad? So if there's a mushroom or a berry that's a poisonous berry for humans, like I could look up right now, poisonous berries for humans, and there'd be a whole list of things that you can find out in nature that are poisonous to us. So we can know those are poisonous to us. But a strawberry might have some chemicals that fruit just evolved to try to survive and has chemicals. But if a human eats it, and we don't have any studies showing that strawberry was bad for our system, then I just don't think the argument that it creates defense mechanisms works, if that makes sense.
My argument isn't really with berries or fruits. It's mainly with vegetables and leaves and stuff like that.
That works out because I hate the taste of most vegetables.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of my argument. That's where the defense chemicals are concentrated.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense if we evolved from primates. I mean, I guess we not just evolved from them. I think we are technically primates, and most primates are frugivores, I think it's referred to, and so they eat mostly fruit. I think chimps eat like 75% figs, which is great because I love figs. They eat a little bit of leafy greens. They eat a good bit of nuts, and then they eat like insects and stuff like that. And I think some might even eat a few other monkeys, but it's a very small amount. Like maybe 4% of their diet is protein from like insects and stuff like that. Now, clearly, we're different than them. Like you mentioned, the cecum, which ours is very different from a chimp. But since we did evolve from them, do you think it's reasonable that our bodies could be designed to eat a decent amount of fruit? Like maybe we should, maybe we're even like bears, where it's like we could get like 50% of our calories from fruit, and then whatever amount of meat you think we need.
I don't know about 50% calories, but I definitely think we do have some adaptations that have stayed to help with digesting some plant foods, like for instance tubers. That's my guess on why our colon isn't shorter than it already is. That was also at least part of the prehistoric human diet. So the humans that had the ability to digest tubers would starve less often than the ones who couldn't. And I would say the evolutionary rules of berries and fruits would probably be to put on fat for the winter. I wouldn't say carbs or sugar on its own makes one fat. That's pretty clear from what I have seen. There are many high carb, low fat people with low body fat, but it's the mixing of fat and carbs that triggers the increase in fat cells.
Okay. So what would you view as like the ideal diet for humans then? Like if you had to guess from all the studies you've read.
Mm-hmm. From what I've read, I can't say like exactly what diet, but what I would say is that at least anything between 80% and 100% meat.
Oh wow, okay.
From what I understand.
Okay.
So I'm not excluding that plants can have some beneficial effects. That's also why I add that error of margin, like between 80 and 100%. So I don't say it's 100%. Maybe 5% of chia seeds might be the best. Who knows?
Gotcha.
But definitely meat as a staple. Yeah.
Do you think that there's any chance that it would be healthier for us to consume insects than to consume mammals?
No, I mean, I haven't read that much into it, but I have seen some things about insects.
I only bring it up because the chimpanzee thing, like it just happens to be our closest living relative. But I'm guessing you've seen that thing where they put a stick in, pull the stick out, there's the termites, and they eat it. And I know it's becoming popular for people to eat insects like crickets and stuff like that. I not that it matters. I just find it interesting. I guess maybe chimps would eat deer and cow if they figured out how to build a gun or a bow and arrow or something. Well, another thing that's kind of interesting is so with insects, I'm guessing humans could eat them without getting too sick, just eating them raw, because chimps seem to be able to do it. But have you done any research on the natural side of it? Not that something being natural is a good argument, but when most animals that are designed to eat animals, they just tear them apart and eat them raw. If somebody killed a cow right now, just cut it out and took the fur off and just got like raw cow flesh, if it was, would that make us sick or no?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
First of all, there's a difference between getting fresh raw meat and getting like like the raw meat from a store.
Yeah.
I will also say that humans should be able to tolerate raw meat, but only under certain conditions. So what basically happens is when you eat less meat, your body produces less hydrochloric acid, so you get a less acidic stomach. So if you don't eat a lot of meat, then it's very possible that you'll get sick from infections, like bacteria in the meat. But if you're already adapted to a high meat diet, I find it unlikely that you should that you would get bacterial infections, because we can see that we have the natural stomach pH of carrion animals, which are scavengers.
Gotcha. Would you be up for trying it? And I don't mean something at a store. I just mean like, let's say you butchered your own thing, like you were on a farm or something. Let's say you had a farm, like a Garland farm type thing, and you just kill a pig, slice it open, get to the area that would be meat that you would normally cook up. Would you be up for it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, interesting. You never tried it though.
Not pork, but I have tried quite a bit of raw cattle.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of carnivores eat the organ meat. Is that something you do?
No, not really. At
Okay,
least
I've
from
heard
what
that's where all the vitamins are at. Is that something you've discovered?
I mean, really, only the two vitamins that you're really getting from it are a lot of B12 and a lot of retinol, vitamin A. But from what I've seen,
Okay.
if you're gonna eat organ meats, it should not be that much.
Oh,
Not as
really?
much as many advocate, if any at all. Um, so
Gotcha.
yeah, mainly muscle meat.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting. And so 80% of your diet is 80 to 100 is meat.
Yeah, I try to keep it around that.
Okay. And do you are you specifically a person that tries to be healthy? Like, do you try to get like the stuff that doesn't have like hormones pumped into it and the unhealthy stuff?
I don't really go. I'm not that engaged in it. I was at a certain point, but I've been a lot more loose lately
Okay. But
around
like when
that.
you eat fruit and stuff like that, like the little bit you do you
Mhm.
specifically get like organic and not the stuff with pesticides?
Um, I mean, I don't. I mean, usually when I eat fruit, it's from my garden. We have like apple
Oh,
tree.
cool.
Yeah, so it's
Oh,
mainly from
awesome.
there. But yeah, if my parents bring back some apples or something, I wouldn't mind taking one, even though it
Gotcha.
may not be organic.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I'm not hyper religious about it.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. 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 Well, yeah, I better hop off here, but this is a good talk.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so here's the thing. So I have strong stances on the ethics side of things, and I feel like I'm able to challenge and discuss ethics pretty well, and that's what I like to discuss. With the health side of things, I don't have as much knowledge. I'm not great at interpreting studies, but I have a friend that is really good with studies, and he's similar to how I feel both of us are, very open-minded and not trying to just win some debate or anything like that. So
Mhm.
if you have any interest in doing a conversation with the three of us, I don't know. You watched some of my talks with Garland. It's actually the guy that I talk with Garland, Michael
Mhm.
McCaffrey.
Mhm.
Really good guy. I think you would like him. But for some reason, him and Garland just bump heads, and it doesn't go well. I
Yeah.
think Garland's just well. Anyways, I think you're different. So, anyways,
Yeah.
if that's a thing you're interested in, he's actually a guy that I like to look at studies with because I never like to just accept things, and I'm disliked by a lot of vegans because I say I wouldn't outlaw farming if I could. If I could snap my fingers and make it to where everybody had to be vegan and outlaw farming, I say it's too soon. Veganism's too recent. I wouldn't want to force people to be vegan in case it's unhealthy. And
Mhm.
so I'm a very skeptical person. So even though I'm vegan and I think it's the right thing to do, I like to step back. So, anyways, Michael's a good person that I can bounce ideas off of, and he can show me how he reads the studies and how he views it. So I saved the study you sent me. Oh wait, that one was on the pesticides and birds. So I think if we did a conversation with me, you, and him, he might want to challenge some of the thoughts you
Mhm.
had on the pesticides and birds. But
Yeah.
also, I know he studies a lot with health stuff, so it could be interesting to have you guys kind of go back and forth on that as well. So.
Sure.